We'll hit record. It sounds so formal. Hi everyone, lovely to see so many people joining during a lunchtime. My name is Laura McManus, and today, as part of the Rise in Conversation session, I will be chatting to Gemma Nicholson of Post Super. So hi Gemma, thank you so much for joining us.
It's lovely to be with you, Laura. Thank you very much for having me.
And how are you today?
I'm good. I'm feeling pretty good. It's been a busy run up to Christmas, so I'm very excited.
So are you kind of at that point now where you're sort of just getting towards the peak, or are you kind of coasting nicely down now, winding down?
I'm supposed to be winding down, but it still feels like it's edging up there. So I think it'll be like that for another kind of couple of weeks. And I always end up kind of feeling like I slide in sideways, like one of those baseball players on the last pit for Christmas, but it should be fun.
I think everyone probably gets that feeling over Christmas. You're just like, and I'm there. But also, just for reference to anyone who does watch this later, this is recording just at the very end of November, early December, just in case you're thinking, why are they talking about Christmas? But I also think this is probably quite true to the life of a post-production supervisor, which brings us neatly onto today's subject.
Yeah,
so these in conversations are not only to learn a bit about what you do, but also a bit about your career history. So I just wondered if you could give the audience a couple of examples of what you did to start your career.
Yeah, I've been in the industry just over 20 years. Don't tell anybody. And I did a degree in sound, and I started as a sound editor. So I started as an assistant and then made my way up to being a sound editor, but on really, really massive projects like Harry Potter's and Batman Begins and those kind of like really massive $150 million shows. And they were incredible to be on. I enjoyed every second of it. But at some point I realized that what I'd really, really enjoyed about being an assistant when I first started on those shows was organizing everybody, was, making sure that everybody had the equipment, what they needed, whether it be food, whether it be the media, whatever it was. And I enjoyed organizing people, making sure that everybody had what they needed. And I realized that I enjoyed talking to people as well. And the further I got down the line of being a sound editor, the more I realized that all I had to do was sit in a dark room by myself and edit sound, and that was just not my jam. It was just really kind of, I was quite uncomfortable doing it, and I felt really weird about the fact that I was not enjoying it, considering I was on such amazing shows. I was literally going from show to show to show with amazing teams who were working at the top of their games, and I felt slightly guilty. So I decided to make a move towards something that I did enjoy, which was the organisation. And I jumped onto Harry Potter 7 Part 2 as a post-production coordinator. I never looked back. So yeah, it was brilliant.
Oh, that's so funny. Like, we talk about how the industry is quite small, and you often bump into similar people. One of my first jobs was working at Pinewood Studios when Harry Potter, the last film, was being filmed. So there you go, nice little crossover there.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a bit of organisation. I probably met you for the first time, I'd say 4 years ago, when you were being the post-production supervisor on a show called Guilt, but you had just finished Dark Crystal for Netflix. So when did you yourself become a post supervisor?
Well, as I said, I kind of 2008, 2009, I jumped onto Harry Potter 7 Part 2 as a coordinator. I then went on to work with a fantastic post supervisor called Katie Reynolds, and we worked on lots of different shows together, lots of Kenneth Branagh shows, kind of like Cinderella and those ones. And then we did Tarzan, we did a Tim Burton film, and then I took a couple of years out. Well, I didn't really there wasn't a couple of years out, but I had a child, and then and I kind of got back into post supervising part-time over those kind of couple of years. So I wasn't really full-time for about 18 months or so. I took about 18 months out at that point, but then kind of after about 6 months of like true maternity leave, I went into post supervising small stuff and just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I would say from that point onwards, I post coordinated and I post supervised depending on the project. I've worked on every different budget level now. So I've worked on those massive $150 million shows, in terms of film. I've also worked on working title, medium budget. I've also worked on low budget, £1 million pound feature films. I've also worked at the top level of high-end TV, so the Netflix Dark Crystal, which was a massive show, which is an incredible show to work on, by the way, incredible from my point of view. And I got to work with another post producer, Karen Payne, who was awesome as well. Then I've worked on the medium level and the low budget, the lower end of the scale for the high-end TV. So yeah, it's just been a funny kind of 10, 12, 13 years. Just keeping on working, really.
And just for those who may not know, what is it, and this is going to be a long list, what is it that a post-production supervisor actually does?
The role has really grown over the last 20 years. I mean, I started work with the first post supervisors really in the country. Jessie Thiel, who is now Jessie Schroeder, I think she's head of post-production for for Pixar now. So wow. I started work with Jessie. She was the first post supervisor I really came across. And about 20 years ago, there was about 20 or 30 post supervisors in the UK. You fast forward to about 10 years ago, there's still not that many, about 50 or 60 post supervisors, coordinators. But the role has really grown with the advent of the digital workflow, the digital cameras, the influx of the adoption of visual effects and throughout film and television. It used to be that those visual effects were really reserved for those really massive films, and that the smaller stuff didn't have any visual effects, especially TV. If you look past 10 years ago, it didn't have any visual effects. Whereas now, with the advent of Game of Thrones and incredibly high production values for pretty much every series out there now, and with the streamers, the Netflix, the Amazon, the Apple, etc., and the delivery requirements lists that are so unwieldy now in terms of the co-productions and needing to deliver multiple assets to multiple places, it just became that we were indispensable. For 10 years ago, it was a nice to have. Now there isn't a high-end TV project that is done without one. And I think it's just representative of the way that the post-production managers have, become part of the process. And as I said, 10 years ago, 50, 60 people working as post supervisors and coordinators. Now I think we have between 200 and 250 in the UK. And in the US and Canada, it's kind of off the charts how many there are working in the industry. So yeah.
So you mentioned there about complexity and the fact that not only have we seen growth on kind of like, I guess, where you can watch content, which automatically means there is more content to be processed, but also the complexity and the budgets have also grown exponentially in comparison to sort of say 10, 15 years ago. I know when I met you, when you were delivering a title to me, I said, oh, so what are you working on next? And that's when you said, well, I'm going to start up this directory of basically all the post-production facilities because it is getting so hard to book somewhere and you really need more resource at your fingertips. So I'm going to get a directory of all these places together. And I kind of nodded at you and went, okay, yeah, good luck with that. And then I'm obviously very cynical because you went ahead and did it. And in 2019, you founded Post Super. Could you tell everyone what exactly is Post Super and how you came to found it?
Post Super was born out of frustration. It was why am I, as a post supervisor, unable to find the things that I need to find in terms of, and it was a number of different things. It wasn't just, it wasn't just one thing. It was the fact that there was no training out there for us, that, we kind of didn't exist in terms of, for training. It was information. There was no information aimed at us. There was information aimed at the camera, the operators, the people who were pressing the buttons, and there was information aimed at the people who were saying, yes, we will adopt this standard, whatever it is. But there was nothing for the mid-level people who had to enact the complex delivery requirements list that we were being given, but yet didn't only need to know which button to press in order to, create an IMF or to work in Dolby Atmos or any of those things. So it felt like there was this low level, I'm saying low level, that kind of one level, which is the operators, and there was that top level, which was the people who were saying, yes, I think this is the way of the future. We should do this on our delivery requirements list. And we were there in the middle going, well, yeah, but what is HDR? What is Dolby Atmos? What is, any number of different things that have been thrown in the last 5 years? And I felt like everything that I had done, in order to get it right, I got it wrong. And, the pain of, am I doing this right? What am I doing? What is my job? Was just the pain of Post Super. So I started Post Super literally just as the answer to, I am so frustrated that I am not able to easily access the information, training and tools to be able to do my job. The information was just literally that information about, how does it all fit together? The training we desperately needed, but nobody was providing. And the tools are the post-production directory you were talking about. And there's another other tools on the website as well, but that was the main one. We just needed a place for all that to come together so that it wasn't, okay, we go search that one, this website for that, and this website for that, and go and search Google for a post-production directory, for a post-production facility, and it may be on page 10 of Google. And especially if you're looking for certain keywords, I don't know if anyone here has ever tried to find an ADR facility in Germany. ADR means something totally different in German. It stands for, it's a totally different acronym. So you were getting conflict resolution companies, not actual ADR facilities for production. So it was literally just the fact that we needed something where the community could come together and just get what they needed. So that's what Post Super is. It's just the answer to my irritation, my frustration. And interestingly, it was shared by pretty much everybody I worked with and far beyond now. So yeah, it's taken off incredibly. So I'm so pleased. Yeah.
So who's kind of your average user on Post Super? So my understanding is that it would be not only people who are post-production supervisors, as you say, looking at that directory, but I'm assuming vendors are also sort of approaching you as well to see how they can be like factored into Post Super.
We now are looking at suppliers we now list suppliers for every different part of Post. So it used to be, I think in the UK, we've probably got about 70% or thereabouts of the post-production companies listed in some way, shape or form, but we do list in 4 main categories now. So it was sound, picture, visual effects and deliverables. So and across those 4 categories, all the other subcategories kind of exist underneath. So yeah, the average user is a post-production coordinator or supervisor, somebody who is looking for the facilities that they need on the post-production directory. There is there is also a subsection of producers who are also using us, as there are kind of post-production executives from the Netflix, the HBOs, the rest of it. They're also able to find what they need on the site to see if there's any kind of options or etc. that they need to find alternatives for.
So if anyone's on this call who's thinking, I might be a good post supervisor, yeah. What is it that is appealing about the job that you would recommend to people?
It's so much fun about post supervising. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of stress as well. I'm not saying that we're not a stressful position, and you do have to have a technical brain, and also interestingly there's 2 parts of it. There's the technical workflow, where you're looking at deliverables lists, you're looking at technical workflows for picture, sound, visual effects, etc. And you have to make sure that it all works in terms of budget and schedule. But there's also the people management side, so that you are also taking into account your teams, making sure that you're managing those properly, everybody's kept happy, nobody's overworked. There's a lot of the people management side of it as well. So there's two sides. There's the technical and there's the people management side. But I do think that it's a very family friendly role. It's not, whereas production management is very much here, there, everywhere. And, you know, you could be on location, you could be working night shoots, etc. There is a lovely family-friendly element to post-production supervision, because you are in one place and you're able to work set hours. It's not often, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's lots of post-supervisors who have you know, caring responsibilities, or they need to look after their children, and they manage to work that around their post-supervision job. There's also post-supervisors as well who will start work later in the day and then finish later at night because they have to speak to LA or the US in some way. And I don't think that it is an easy job, but at the same time, it's very rewarding, because you're getting to see the whole thing to come together, and you're getting to be part of that whole process. It has been, you know, one of the most, you know, the best parts of my career, to be able to facilitate all of these amazing creative people and to take off their plate all the budgeting, the scheduling, the where am I working, do I have insurance, do I have equipment to work on, you know, to take all that away from them and to allow them to do the jobs that they're meant to do. It's just been a fantastic part of my career. But I do think it's a very fun job. You know, we all come together and we have just as much camaraderie as we do on set in post. It's just in a slightly different way and slightly more controlled. So
yeah. I know when we had a quick chat beforehand just to discuss what we'd be talking about today. And it's mentioned in the invite as well that obviously it is a role that seems to attract quite a lot of women. As part of Rise, we're kind of looking at how we could achieve gender diversity across the industry. But actually, on post-production supervision, it does tend to be more female-led than male-led. You mentioned obviously it's family friendly, so for working families, obviously it goes hand in glove there. Are there other reasons why you think that women tend to be post-production supervisors?
I think that we have an organisational brain, and I think that we have an organisational edge to what we do. I think that we're often, you know, I don't necessarily subscribe to the whole gender bias that women are not technical and women are only kind of, you know, on one side. I think that it is a case of sometimes, though, that women are sidelined as in on the technical side. And this is actually one interesting job role where we can be technical, we can use that organizational edge, and we are interestingly kind of pushed towards it. So because of the way that in the past there's been lots of people who go into post-production and they're pushed towards the receptionist, the management position, the bookings person, and I think that there is a lot to be said for that, you know, in the reason that there are so many post supervisors who are women. It is about 80 to 85% women in the UK. It's not, but there are a small kind of but significant amount of men who do the job as well. They do it just as well as women. Yeah.
And I know we're all sick to death of hearing about it, but you obviously launched your new business in 2019, and then along in 2020, COVID came. So I guess how has that affected not only launching your own business, but also the role of a...
Sorry, could you just repeat that last bit? I apologise, I didn't hear that.
Oh no, don't worry, I've got a dog barking in the background. So how has the role of a post-production supervisor changed during COVID when everything's had to be like, is it something was quite flexible? Was it quite hard to get set up?
Well, we set up the business in late 2019, and we set a developer going, and we said, okay, come on, create something for us, create a placeholder web page. And I think we actually launched to the community kind of 2 weeks before COVID hit, which was epic timing on our part. But I think that the interesting reason, one of the reasons that we've succeeded, is because we pivoted so fast. And when the post supervisor role changed, in the fact that everything had to go remote, there was no slowdown in post. We just kept working. We just, as post supervisors, as post production people, editing, sound, visual effects, it all just went remote, kind of almost overnight. It went remote, and I think that all of a sudden we had to get really used to that remote way of working. People were desperate for information. Something that we really tried to do throughout the pandemic was to provide them with updates about how things were changing, how the technology was being used, and it really helped a lot of people. I think the post super webinar program at that time really helped a lot of people to acclimatize to the new world that we were working in, where we were all working from our back bedrooms, and I think, interestingly, post supervision hasn't really gone, I don't think post has gone fully back to in person. We're now at this odd kind of halfway point, which is it's a hybrid of the remote and the in-person, because there is something magic that happens when you get lots of post-production post-production people together, or creatives together in general. They spark off each other. They make things which are better than they would have been if they had been remote and been apart. However, with the necessity that kind of COVID has brought in, the fact that we have to be remote in some ways. People are not able to travel, sometimes over borders, or then unable to come in for reviews or something like that. It has that hybrid flexibility of being able to be remote for whatever reason, means that we've just been able to keep on working. And I think that the post supervisor role has changed massively, in the fact that we're now just having to facilitate all that remote working as standard. And I think that as it goes forward, there definitely will continue to be that hybrid, because people have got used to the work-life balance. They've got used to working from home sometimes and working in the office other times. And I don't think that will go away in post, because there's too many benefits to it, kind of, over and above COVID. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's so funny to think that, if we told ourselves in 2019 that we were doing this, you'd be like, no, it will never work. It will never work. But I think it just shows how flexible and agile we all are.
Yeah, and I think we did it with tools that were already available. It wasn't that people had to all of a sudden create new ways of collaboration for us. We just utilized everything that was already there. It just accelerated that, and to the point where we only used those for a while. So.
And I guess with productions having to stop during COVID, unless they were kind of essential news and things like that, did that mean that things slowed down for the post-production community, or was it always kind of consistent in the background?
It was just, I think there's lots of people in the post communities who were actually quite burned out, in the fact that we never really stopped. I think there was a lull over Christmas last year, and January, February, for kind of editorial. And then for sound post-production people, there was a gap between approximately January to May or so, where things really slowed down. But for post supervisors who were busy delivering shows, post-supervising shows, setting up new shows, we've been hit with an avalanche of work, which kind of we knew was coming in 2019, but a lot of it kind of just parked for a little while, whilst the pandemic, the first half of the pandemic happened, but then really got going again in kind of September, October, and really ramped up in February, March, April this year. And we now have, we don't have enough post supervisors, I don't think, to be able to handle all the work. But saying that, there is, they're doing damned well. They are managing to deliver. They are kind of not letting the team down. They're doing really well. So, yeah.
You mentioned earlier about a webinar that you did when you first went into lockdown. You also work with the NFTS. Can you tell us more about a bit about the outreach you do?
Yeah, we do outreach with lots of different companies and different associations and different organisations. Basically, when Post Super started, that the whole ethos was, if it didn't exist, we'll create it, and if it does exist, we'll promote it. So any training schemes that already existed, absolutely happy to promote them. Absolutely. Any services that already existed, happy to promote those, happy to introduce their community to anything that they can possibly get their hands on that will help them in their work. And I think that one thing that I knew right from the office, that there wasn't any training out there for post-production supervisors at all. And I think there's a few people, and Cynthia Canna was one of them over at HBO, because Alison Beckett over at Netflix. There's a few people out there who knew that there wasn't enough post supervisors who wanted to do something to help. And I knocked on John Waddle, who's the director of the NFTS. I knocked on his door very early in January 2020. And I said, look, there needs to be a course for post supervisors. We need a course for post supervisors. And he kind of called my bluff. He just said, well, if there isn't a course for post supervisors, then you're going to have to help create one. And so I really started there, and I was so lucky in the fact that John was really kind of positive and on board right from the start. Cynthia was fantastic and wanted to be involved creating, as did Alison, and there's other great people at Netflix like Sarah Parfitt, and there's some fantastic people who've really been incredibly supportive of that course. I was very involved in creating that course with another post supervisor called Layla Blackman, and we created something brilliant. It's a really great course, certificate in post-production supervision. It didn't exist before, it exists now. The first cohort was welcomed with open arms with the post supervision community in the UK, and they all have jobs. None of them, they were literally kind of like, come close, please. I think most of them had jobs before the course ended, but I think some of them are booked up until 2023. So
wow.
They're very in demand. And we start with our second cohort in January. So yeah, I'm really proud of it, and it's definitely something that I was very lucky to be involved with. But really proud to be involved.
Sounds great. And I mean, I think what's also really lovely to hear is that you're very open about it. It's like, I will share the information I have available to me. I'm desperately looking for other people to do this job. It's not like a closed circle.
No.
Because I feel sometimes people in media especially are like, oh, I don't know how I'd get into that. And yes, I'm not going to deny that it is a hard industry sometimes to get into, but actually you sound like you're actively pursuing people to come and join you.
Well, we've actually actively pursued conversations with organisations throughout the world. So we have, there's a training partner called A Post Lab who are brilliant in Europe. There is other organisations like the kind of Blue Collar Post Collective, and we've reached out over there to some of the kind of the really big, the PGA and the HPA and all those kind of different places, because we need to start those conversations. We need to all be on the same page, because if we're not all on the same page, we're all kind of doing the same job. We need to align ourselves to make sure that everybody, so when you hire a post supervisor in the UK, you know that you're getting the same work done as if you were to hire it in the in the US or in Europe, or so we need some standard almost between all of us, and I think that's really interesting, and having those conversations, it makes us all feel more connected, because we're all working on fantastic content. Where we're in the UK, we're doing an amazing job. In the US, they're doing an amazing job. Europe, same thing. It's just a case of us all working together, and we all need the same help. We all need information, we all need training, we all need tools, we all need that support. So yeah,
especially as like the post supervisors tend to be freelance, so it's almost like having a network of kind of colleagues, I imagine.
Yeah, we're very disparate. We've tended to all work by ourselves, and maybe there's groups of 3, 4, 5, 6, that band together. And I think there was, there was a great thing done in the UK where there was an email list all of a sudden, that kind of for post supervisors. But I think we've just taken it one step further, and we're able to, but now with our newsletter every week, we reach kind of between 1,500 and 2,000 people every week, so it's kind of it's grown and grown and grown. And the fact that everybody is kind of wanting the same information, everybody's kind of wanting a similar feeling of belonging to my group, it's nice to try and provide some of that.
And we're talking about groups. I'm now actually going to throw open questions to the group. So if anyone has a question, feel free to either just pop it in the chat box or come off mute, put your camera on and say hello. Otherwise I'll continue to ask you questions. So Alison.
Hey, so I was kind of wondering, Gemma, you were talking about how you've worked on such a vast variety of projects, things that were super high profile, things that were not. What is there a difference that you found between working on something that's like super high profile, whether it's the high profile contributors, or do you have to sign NDAs? And I don't know, I just imagine like working on the 7th Harry Potter movie must have been crazy versus something that you may not know was going to go anywhere, kind of thing.
I think it's really exciting to watch anything come together. I think that there's lots of moving parts on a really massive film. However, you're a lot more siloed in large films. So you're there to do a very specific job. And so on smaller content, you have to do more. You have to be more things to more people, because on a larger film, those are all separate roles. So I would say that on a Cinderella, I was very much there to, I was working with Katie Reynolds at the time, who's a fantastic post supervisor, but I was there to post coordinate, and I was there to fulfill a role for her, whether that be diary management, ADR management, making sure that everybody's talking to each other, doing all the POs, tracking all those bits and pieces. But I didn't really get into any legals. I didn't get into any clearances. I didn't get into any. I was not there to help with the workflow in any way, shape, or form. Because I was there to fill a very specific role. Whereas, when I've worked on say Guilt, that I worked on with Laura, I was there to post supervise, create the budget, create the schedule, make sure that the workflow was right. I was there to kind of deliver to multiple different departments, whether that be to the advertising or promo department, or whether it be to deliver the actual show. I was there to be everything to all people, and I think that is, for a smaller show, you can't have multiple positions because there isn't the money for it. But with a big show, as I said, you're much more siloed. You are there to do a very specific role. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Thanks.
I would say that there's, I wouldn't say that there was any more work for me to do on a small show than there is on a big show. It's just that because it's a bigger show, there's more people to do the work, so it's spread out a lot more. And I think the politics get quite hardcore on some of the big shows. I've been party to some very interesting discussions in my career, and that's always an interesting thing. I think the smaller shows can, though, also be as political as the bigger shows. It's just the fact that it's slightly more hidden. There's a lot of political posturing by a lot of bigger personalities, I think, on bigger shows. And that's where I will finish that.
Yeah. So who? No, we won't ask you to reveal sources. Does anyone else have a question for Gemma?
Quiet.
No. I guess one of my questions that I had was kind of what's next on your is there something that you have yet to achieve that you're wanting to achieve, be it 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, or is there something you're working on at the moment that you can share with us?
Oh, there's a couple of things. I think the ultimate thing for me is recognition for post-production managers and for post-production supervisors and, you know, facilities. I think the post-production manager in general is very overlooked as part of the process, and we are a key part of the process. Unless we have people who know what they're doing and who are properly trained, things don't go as well. You know, things get, you know, people, you end up having to pay a lot more for because maybe there's been mistakes made if you so I think that the recognition for post supervisors is actually what I'm after ultimately. I'd like to keep banging the drum to say, you know, we need more education, we need more training, we need more tools, we need more help, and we need more recognition, because we are, you know, we're an integral part of this. It's not something you can do without us now. So that's, I think that would be my ultimate goal, and I'm not entirely sure what that means. Whether that means, you know,
an Oscar, Oscar for best post-production supervisor.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. And I think that the recognition is massive. I think, you know, anything that I'd like to share, we've got some incredible stuff coming up. You know, kind of, I'm really excited about the post-production directory is going from strength to strength. However, we also have an associated directory, which will be post-production freelancers and creatives post-production directory. And this will be all the key members of our creative crews that we can have in one place, because we can already search for a colorist through our website. So you can search for a colorist who's working in-house at our website. However, it would be very nice to be able to compare those with the CVs of freelance colorists at the same time. So you've got the in-house people and also the freelance people all in one place. And so that's coming over the next month. And when we launch that, I'm just so excited to see where that takes us, because I know that at the moment, the rocks that we as post supervisors are looking under in order to find our people, and not the same rocks that people who are looking for work are hiding under. So we have a disconnect here with the people who want to hire and the people that would like to be hired. So we need to join that somehow, and I think that hopefully we can help bridge that gap. So I'm really excited about that part.
Sounds great. We've had a question on the chat from Hannah. My question is, did you find it difficult coming back to work after having a child? Do you think the industry does enough to support parents returning to work?
Oh, that's a very loaded question. I do remember going to an event a few years back, a Women's Day event, and the main lady stood up at the front and she said, I don't understand. She said, I don't understand. Where are all the women in the mid to high level positions? And I felt like screaming at her, well, they're all going to have children and you won't let them come back. I think that, yeah, I think it's a really difficult thing. I knew that with my first child, I only took 3 months maternity leave before I was back. With my second daughter, I took 6 months kind of off. And then I spent the next year after that kind of gradually making my way back into the world of work. And I found it really difficult. And I really felt like I lost myself a little bit after I had my second child. I felt like I didn't want to work full time because she was so little, and I felt like I wasn't going to get to see her. But yet, all my self-esteem was wrapped up in my work, and I think that was a really big thing for me, was feeling that odd disconnect. That I wanted to work, but at the same time I didn't feel like I could give everything that I had given before to my job, and because I wanted to keep some of it back for myself and keep some of it back for my family, and I think that that's really difficult for women. I do think that post-supervisors or post-supervision position allows for more flexibility, so I think it's a good position, but I do think it's difficult for women in our industry. It requires a lot. There's a lot taken from us, and that's not to say that it's I think it's getting better. I think that the increasing amount of job shares is really a heartening thing to see, but I think that women should be allowed to come back, and to come back in a part or 3/4 kind of the time role. I think that that's something that we need to work on as an industry. But I do think it will get there. I don't think it's going to take us very long. I'm quite positive about it. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, Hannah. Yeah, that there is some light at the end of the tunnel. I have no experience of this, so I can only listen to what you guys, working mothers, say. I think P. Hughes, sorry, I don't have your first name, has raised their hand.
Hello.
So, hello.
Just being the etiquette on Zoom. Hi, Gemma. It's really interesting. I just have a question about the NFTS course. Similarly, I have a background in edit assisting on mostly factual TV shows, a couple of films, and then I moved into a coordinator role, post-production coordinator role, and now I'm a manager, but it's for online films. So obviously, there's such a knowledge gap in terms of the delivery specs, because it's very basic. Ultimately, it's just going on YouTube, and it's not very varied. So I'm just wondering, because I have quite a lot of experience as an assistant, an edit assistant, but if I'm going to move more into eventually freelancing as a supervisor, which is, it's kind of piquing my interest what you're saying, so thank you. I'm wondering if the NFTS course would help to fill that knowledge gap, because obviously I kind of imagine it's quite a big gap, because I've only worked in post-production as a supervisor coordinator for online films.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I've never worked I've never done online films per se. I'm not entirely sure quite what you mean by online films, but I think that post-production is post-production. However, the etiquette changes, and the way that we fill out the job roles changes as well throughout the so if you're working on a TV show, a mid-level high budget TV show, you may have 2 to 3 sound editors working, and you'll have a re-recording mixer in the sound department, versus if you were to have a high budget film, you may have up to 15 or 20 sound editors, and 2 to 3 re-recording mixers. So just the amount of people working on a film changes, and also the etiquette, the way that who reports to who changes, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So there is differences, obviously between factual and high-end TV. There's differences between high-end TV and film. But I'd say that, a lot of it can be learned quite easily. We have some courses on Post Super's website that we originally developed for screen skills, and they're now just courses that we have that live on our website. And if you go to the training tab, you can see the PS courses, online courses there. And there's 2 courses there. There's one on post-production workflow, and there's another one on post-production deliverables. And those 2 courses may help you to kind of bridge the gap a little bit between your, what you have, what you know already, and what will be required to move into HUTV and film. So that might help in some way. I think that the NFTS course is a fantastic course. It really does take people who are at a coordinator level, and it allows them to get on a fast track, so that we can't teach post supervision. You need, you know, experience behind you to post supervisor project. However, we can teach you every element, so that you do know about budgeting, scheduling, workflow, deliverables, every different part of it, whether that be the technical or the people management. So that's what we teach on the NFTS course. It's a very comprehensive course that we deliver over 6 months. So I think that there's probably an interim level that you could probably educate yourself with the courses on PostSuper's website. However, the NFTS course really would take it to a totally different level.
Okay, that's really helpful, because I know like the budget is one of my knowledge gaps, because that's not something I have to deal with. But yeah, so what I meant by online films is that it's just films that we publish on YouTube. So it's, you know, it's really basic stuff, but thank you so much, that's really helpful. I'll have a look on your website for the courses as well as the NFTS one.
No worries.
Great. I think that's probably us nearly finished then. I guess, Gemma, is there anything that I've not mentioned that you would like to add?
No, I'd say, I think that the only thing I probably should say is that there's absolutely no cost to joining PostSuper. It's free for any post supervisor or coordinator or anybody to do with post-production management to join. Even if it's just something you would like to know more about, feel free to join, use the resources on the site. And yeah, hopefully we can make a convert of you and drag you towards the post supervision.
You won't be happy until everyone's a post-production supervisor. So yeah, you also mentioned there was a newsletter as well, so encourage people to sign up to that. Just a reminder that this obviously In Conversation has been hosted by Rise, so they've also got a little resource online. Follow them on social media. They've also got a newsletter which will also have future events coming up, other In Conversations, but they have a lot of other events coming up as well that may be of use to you if you have joined this meeting today. But all that's left to say is thank you so much for your time, Gemma. It's been lovely chatting to you. I really enjoyed our chat when we spoke last week. I've really enjoyed having other people hear what you have to say about the work you've done over the last couple of years on Post Super, but just in general, your thoughts on the industry as well. So thank you so much, and to everyone else, thank you so much for joining. I know, appreciate this is over lunch for a lot of you, and yeah, hopefully see all of you very soon. Bye guys.